gathering is really just to highlight, and this podcast is to highlight some of the beautiful thing that's going on. We know there's a lot of negative things in the Muslim community that are being highlighted constantly. But yet there's so many gems in our community and so many special people and centers and organizations, and people just don't know about them. So as an artist, I wanted to use my platform and the fact that, people follow me on social media and all these type of things, and I travel a lot to be able to share some of those stories. So yeah, I'm honored to have you as a guest. Alhamdulillah. So there's a lot, and as looking around this museum, there's a lot of information, and there's a lot of time that went into it. So I guess first off, I know there's a lot of history to this physical location, the building. So I want to hear about the history of this building and then how it became what it is today.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. The history of this building was built and developed by the descendants of the Bill family. The Bill family is the family that owned Yarrow Mahmood, the famous Muslim in the Washington, D.C., Georgetown area. The Bill family had owned a lot of property up in Georgetown and Maryland. It was a very popular family. Matter of fact, this was a carriage house. They built it as a carriage house. This building and the building next door. The carriage house, they would paint the old carriages, and then they turned it into a gas station. Back in 1973, the Muslims that were part of the Nation of Islam brought this building. I'm not sure how long they had this building before they brought it in 1973, but they brought it from the Bill family. And I found it very unique that the family that freed a Muslim in D.C. also was a family that sold the building to a Muslim community.
So Yarrow Mahmood, and I know a little bit because I was reading the little section on him, but for those who don't know, who was he? What's his story?
Yarrow Mahmood was a Muslim from Guinea that lived in Georgetown. Yarrow Mahmood is a famous Muslim personality in D.C., as well as there's a few other Muslim personalities that are famous. But what you find with Muslim personalities that are famous, you'll find a taqwa. They had a God consciousness. They were known for praying. They were known for fasting, using their dhikr beads. You also find Yarrow Mahmood was an entrepreneur. Yarrow Mahmood invested in 3 different investments. One to an older guy that had a business, and that went under. He invested into a younger guy, thought that younger guy would be more alive and be successful. That business went under. Then he invested in the Columbia Bank. He was one of the first to invest into the Columbia Bank. And something happened, that went broke. So Yarrow wound up saying that he's going to maintain and keep his own money. Yarrow was also known as a great swimmer. He was very industrious. He had owned property in Georgetown. They are doing an excavation now in Georgetown on his property that he once owned. So that's basically summary of Yarrow Mahmood.
So was he a freed slave?
He got freed in 1798. He brought his own son's freedom, and then he eventually brought his own wife's freedom. There's a good book about Yarrow Mahmood. It's called From the Slave Ship to Harvard, where the Yarrow's descendants wound up going to Harvard.
And there's some famous artists that drew him and stuff. He was a personality that people knew and loved. He was kind of famous in his day.
He was a very famous personality. There's 2 paintings that was done on Yarrow Mahmood, and they were done by famous painters that they really, they just didn't do anybody. And Yarrow, matter of fact, there's very few paintings of African American people that was enslaved at that time, and Yarrow Mahmood is one of them. And there's 2 paintings, not just one, but 2. And one of them hangs up in Georgetown Public Library in the Peabody Room, and the other one is in Philadelphia Historical Society, and it was just sold for over $3 million. So Yarrow Mahmood is a very, very classic. Matter of fact, there's going to be a play at the museum on Yarrow Mahmood this Saturday, the 13th, I believe, from 4 to 5:30. One of the Muslim personalities here have developed a play on the life and times of Yarrow Mahmood. So his debut will be here Saturday, believe this 13th.
And I want to give a shout out to Parvez and the brothers who helped organized this event, and they called their group the Yarrow Collective in honor of that. So
That's
it's
right.
beautiful to see people honoring this legacy. Okay, so fast forward, he's owned by the people that own this property.
Yes.
He's freed. Eventually, it's bought by the Nation of Islam, 1973.
1973. They used this building as a Shabazz Bakery, Culture Center, a temple, and a school. Has been used as this building has been used. We came into this building. Matter of fact, 5 years ago. March 2011. We've came into this building. This was not our first choice. This is the choice that Allah guided us. We went around looking on Pennsylvania Avenue, U Street, downtown, everywhere that we thought be conducive for cultural tourism. But then one day for about a month, this building was empty. And I would ride by, close my eyes. I didn't want to be here. I was like Hagar, running to and fro, looking all around, but it was right here. So the opportunity came and presented itself. We presented a package to the masjid at the time, and they allowed us to rent the space. And as we are now, this has gone into our 5th year. And we're looking to grow, looking to develop. We're looking for either to expand on this space or look for new space to grow and develop.
Well, I think it's powerful in that you may have been looking for different locations, more central to the city, quote unquote, nicer building, newer property, but it's ironic that this building itself is a piece of the museum. It is the museum, but it's history. Like it is. So that's from Allah for sure.
It is. Wallahi.
Alhamdulillah. So I think for me, when I first walked through here, like 6 months ago, all of it was amazing. But particularly the extensive history that you have of the Nation of Islam, and then, the kind of transitional periods, Imam W.D. Muhammad. There's so old Muhammad Speaks, like original. I was just looking at, like, you have a lot of stuff that is just like the Bilalian press bag,
yes.
the shoulder bag. I was like, man, I want one of those. Rock that. But like, there's just a lot here. So why did you do this? Like, what in your life caused you to become the people's historian?
I used to work for a Muslim organization, American Muslim Council. It was the first Muslim political organization. And I saw that my immigrant Muslim community didn't see themselves as part of American fabric. They saw that they thought Islam came in the 70s or in the 80s. They didn't want to accept the Nation of Islam because of their shirk that went on. Then the Nation of Islam, my people didn't realize, they thought they were the only ones. Nobody else was a Muslim, nobody else was here but them. So I felt that there was a story that needed to be told. Then, we're taught to honor our parents, to respect them. So I started, my father used to tell me all the time, oh man, the Muslims don't want you, them Africans don't want you, blah, 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 blah. But I started researching my own family history and doing genealogical research. And my father's comes from Brunswick, Georgia, which is the mainland from the isolated islands, Sapper Island and St. Simon Island, where the Muslim community come from. My father's a Gullah. The Gullah people, like when I came to the Nation of Islam, some of the things the Nation of Islam was teaching, I'm like, I got that from home. So then when I started investigating, I found my ancestor. Her name was Claire Higginbottom. She had married a white indentured servant, and she came directly from Africa. And all her children was listed as mulattoes, but one was listed as black that was living with her. And her name was Amir Bakir. Bakir! Oh, ya Allah, that's Muslim. So then but then the next census it became Baker. Went from Bakir to Baker. Then I started researching. Allah says, travel throughout the land and see what was before you. So they said a Muslim was here, a Muslim was there. I went. Allah allowed this opportunity to go, to explore. So I just started collecting and gathering, and I realized our story needs to be told. Our story has not been told. There's a misunderstanding of who we are, what we are. So as I started traveling, found that Muslims and Muslim community, the first Muslim community was in Georgia. I found tombstones with the Tawheed on it. Found Muslims, I was in, where was I at? Indiana, at an Islamic conference. A woman that walked by me looked like an Arab. But I knew she couldn't be a Muslim because she had shorts on. At a Muslim, it's a conference. Come on now, you know. So, but she
You
said
never know what goes down at that.
yeah, I knew that would go down. So she said she was a Moor. A Moor, and she said there's a whole bunch of them living in Delaware. So I traveled go to Delaware. I go to Delaware, and I usually do cemeteries, historical societies, libraries.
So what were you looking for when you were going to cemeteries or when you're going to these libraries? What are you looking for?
I look for and when I go to cemeteries, I'm looking for tombstones. And what I like is it makes me like a child. You have to lean on Allah. Allah guide me, show me what you want me to see. So you have to be a child and depend on Him. So when I travel, I see tombstones. Matter of fact, it was one tombstone. There's a story, an American story, a movie called The Fanny Kimball Story. It's a story about a Pierce Butler, a famous plantation owner who married a New England woman who was not exposed to slavery. And they all died out, and his plantation was the Butler Plantation. So as I was leaving from Sapper Island going to Brunswick, I stopped by, saw a cemetery called the Butler Cemetery. And then when I rode by the Butler Cemetery, I went in, and this was a slave cemetery. I found a tombstone with the Tawheed on it, one finger. And it's Sambo Swift. I'm a Muslim, I'm one finger, come on. You know, then I go investigate what they say about tombstones. And the comment that they had to say about the one finger, they said they think they was pointing up to God. They wasn't sure, you know, what was going on. You know, but Christianity, they believe in three gods. They don't do they do cross, the baby, the hand, you know, they don't do the one finger. So I found these tombstones from Georgia. My wife found them up in Canada. We found them in Maine, all down, all the way out to Indiana. And at first I thought this was unique to African American descended Muslims. But when I went into the town Mecca, Indiana, Muhammad, Illinois, Kansas, these are whites, and Maryland, these are white cemeteries. There was tombstones with the Tawheed on it. And so when I talked with a Turkish guy, he said even some Sufis out of the Turkish community, they do the one finger. And you know, and then the other thing with that tombstone, the first tombstone I found was Sambo. I'm not sure how y'all are aware about Sambo. A lot of y'all are young, but they used to make mockery. That's Sambo, you know, of African American, big lip, black, and all this kind of stuff. But really, West Africans named their second son Samba. That means the warrior spirit. If you got that second child, they say always want to compete with the oldest and dominate the younger. So they call that the warrior spirit. So you find Samba. And in Brazil, many places, they use this terminology. So the first tombstone I found was named Sambo. And he was in between the earliest two Muslim communities. One was led by Bilali Muhammad, the other one was led by Salih Bilali. So in my understanding of Islamic history, first time I heard Bilal was Bilal ibn Rabah, the first one went in the call of the prayer. And Bilal, when he got tortured, they put the rock on his chest. All he could say was, "Hada, didn't do one finger." Same thing in America. They stripped us from our culture, our history, our identity, and everything, but they still kept to the concept of one God. One God. And so then once you start seeing that, and then like another thing happened. I was in another Islamic conference. A guy told me that he was up in Mecca, Indiana, with some rednecks, is what he used. You know, and I'm not sure if he was drinking with them or what, you know, but he was up there and he said he found tombstones with Arabic on it. Ya Allah. Allah, make it easy. So we were invited to go to University of Indiana in Bloomington. And that's like 45 miles away from Mecca. No, Urbana is 45 miles away from Muhammad, Illinois. Mecca is not that far from Plainfield, Indiana. So we went in there. Matter of fact, it was a young lady. For all practical purposes, looked like a European, Irish girl, redhead. She said, "My family is buried in this cemetery. I'll take you over to my cemetery." And it was a Hickson cemetery. Inside this cemetery, I found tombstones written in Arabic. But this Arabic was the old Ottoman script, which was demolished in 1923. And so they was here early. And she died in 1917. So I do cemeteries. Matter of fact, I went visit my brother who had passed in Quantico Military Cemetery. When he passed, they didn't bury him right then. We all left. So then once I got the number where he was buried, I go down in there and I ride and I look. But I don't know. So they're all diagonal, you can see. Perfect in the line. So I'm looking for my brother, and all of a sudden I see a Taib. It's Muslim. So I run down there, and it happened to be a Muslim I know. Ya Allah. May Allah have mercy on him. He was a Boy Scout leader, also in the military, so that's why he was buried there. So then I start going around. A whole bunch of Muslims are buried in there. And now they don't have the Taib, they got the crescent. Starting the crescent, you'll see it in that room. And so in any military cemeteries, they will put the star and crescent. And one thing I learned, I did a book, Muslim veterans, American veterans, American wars. And I'm shocked that book was used in the Supreme Court to justify that they cannot put up a cross. Somebody wanted to put up a cross in the veteran cemetery, and they said you cannot. There's other people that are buried there.
Freedom of religion, even in death. Yeah.
That's right. And they use our book as a reference point. Now, there's a couple of them criticized the book, but yet they used it as a reference point. So I was very humble about that.
And so, tombstones, and then we're in D.C., and you made use of the kind of old census records, and you were searching for names, early names, like what, 1800s?
Look, in the census, I have a book that's, inshallah, one day it will come out. Muslims have been in American, census records didn't start to 1790. There's people in 1790 with Islamic names. There's an 1800 census. The census, they do it every 10 years. So in the 1800s, they're in there. 1810, 1820, 1830, but really the 1850 is the ones that really gets me. In the 1850 census, you find one Muslim named Muhammad living in California, coming from Arabia. You find a Muslim, Henry Allah, which is probably Abdullah, but Henry Allah, maybe Michigan or Minnesota, I'm not sure where he's living, Ohio, pardon me. He's living in Ohio. He comes from Ireland. I found 7 census records with people that come from Ireland. So now
Muslim names.
With Muslim names. So I go to Sheikh Google, Muslims in Ireland. Comes up 1959. I said, that can't be. Can't be. I see these tombstones. I see these census records. So now I go Google Moors. Muslim Moors conquered the southern parts of Ireland in the 1600s, 1400s. And so when the potato famine came, because you know the Irish people was treated like black folks in this country, and possibly because they were Muslims. So yes, I do those census. I did a book, a Muslim listed in draft records, enlistment records. Muslims that wasn't even citizens fought in this country and then got their citizenship. Another thing, we did a group, we had a summer camp. We took some children to the archives. And so the lady at the archives was trying to present to us, to be able to communicate to us. She pulled out a 1911 record of a Muslim named Muhammad from Afghanistan, Kandahar, Afghanistan. And by 1913, got his citizenship, him and his wife, living in Oregon. So Muslims have been here. We've been part of the American fabric. We fought in all the revolutionary wars, all the wars.
For those that haven't been here or that are listening, he's referring to a picture that's in the other room of, it's like 30 men, right? All like white men in like old suits, right? It looked like what hipsters wear now. You know what I mean? And it says, what does it say? Mohammedan society?
Mohammedan society.
And it's basically they're from Poland, Russia.
These are your Tartars, Muslim Tartars that came every war. every war, from the Spanish Inquisition, the first major war that I could recall in history. Muslims came here in America from the Spanish Inquisition. You find them in South Carolina, Columbia, you find them in Delaware, those Muslims that I talked about, the Moors of Delaware. You find them there. When you had the African diaspora or the slave trade or those wars, you have Muslims coming over here in waves, from Brazil to Canada. Hundreds and thousands. As a matter of fact, I just saw a movie, they said there was over 30 million Africans that was brought here. They say that 30% of them were Muslims. So what's that? 9 million Muslims at least came here, if those numbers are right or lower. Then we have the census, the Revolutionary War. That's what I was saying. Muslims fought in the Revolutionary War. We found at least 6 people, and I'm limited in my Arabic. I'm limited in understanding of different Muslim names. I only did the names I know. God knows how many more there is. But one come to my mind is Babit Muhammad. There's no question. Now, what he turned to, only Allah knows, but he had that name Muhammad. In the Civil War, we found over 292 people listed with Islamic names. The World War I, World War II. In World War I, there was 550 people had the last name Muhammad, spelt 41 different ways. So once I saw that 41 different ways, I am no longer strung out on any way somebody spells their name.
However you want to spell that.
You can't. MAMUMO. One M, 2 M's, EDAD, ETIT, ETT. Matter of fact, the first Muslim family, or first Muhammad family we found listed in America as a free people was in 1850, listed as black. Blacks didn't get their freedom to 1865. But in 1850, lived in Frederick, Maryland. You ever heard of John Brown? In this area where John Brown and all that happened. They was free people, and they spelled the name Muhammad, forget all the beginning, but M-E-T-T. A couple times it was spelled M-I-T-T, and they was listed as free people. Some moved to Baltimore, and they became known as your vendors or your Arabs. Those are the vendors that was down in there. One moved out to Nebraska and had a cake mix, a Omar cake mix. One of them, one of the descendants is, and they kept this name Muhammad up to 1963. From 1850, that's 13 years that they kept this name Muhammad.
And then they switched it, or what?
I don't know, Allahu A'lam. I came close. One of them came a Christian for sure. On her tombstone, I found a cross on it, but her name was still Muhammad. We went to try to interview some of the families. We just missed them. They just moved. So there's still a family that still exists. But one of the descendants is Francis Gregory, who was one of the first African-American astronauts. Is one of the descendants from Margaret Hagan Muhammad. So yes, we've been here.
So we got a sprinkling of Muslims and here and there. And when does it be? When are we talking about sizable communities? I guess I wanna move into the early nation, Elijah Muhammad, and all of this, where you have the Moorish Science Temple, you have this Islam kind of this revival, you could say, of Islam.
Okay. Well, let me break it down a little different. You had 3 groups of Europeans colonizers. The Spaniards, they covered the Muslims, Florida and the Seminoles and the Spanish Muslims. You had the English, who covered what they call the Gullah Muslims. These are Muslims that were from Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. They wound up, when the industrial age came, they wound up in New Jersey, New York, New England area. The third group was your French. They controlled what Louisiana, New Orleans, and that area. And they call those Muslims the Creoles. Then there's one more group that was here. They was called the Ben Ishmael tribe. The Ben Ishmael people are made up of Melungeons, runaway Muslims, African American Muslims, and Native American Indians. They say that they are the group of people that developed the town of Muhammad, Illinois, Mecca, Indiana, and Morocco, Illinois, and they used to make annual journeys and wound up into Mecca, Indiana. They ran them out into Indianapolis, and then they wound them up into Chicago and Detroit area. With the point that you come into the turn of the century now, the 20th century, you have the 1902, you got wave of immigrations coming, different Muslim personalities. 1913, Noble Drew Ali was up in Newark, New Jersey, started a group what they call the Canaanite Temple. Canaanites are the Canaans. They go on the concept of Ham. Noah and he has children, and Ham is one of the sons. But Canaan is one of his children. And they call them Canaanites. Thank you. And that was what he first started. Then he moved to Chicago. He said he moved to Chicago because people was more receptive to Islam. Some of his early first followers was the Ben Ishmael tribe, the people that was in this region. And that is why, if you notice, Noble Drew Ali, the Nation of Islam, under Elijah Muhammad, their leadership, their headquarters in Chicago and Detroit. Mm-hmm. Muslims were more heavier into that area.
Sure.
So Noble Drew Ali, but he started, the law of the land stated in 1685, if you was a Moor or a Turk, you got the right to be free. You can't own slaves, but you got the right to be free. So the Muslim first political activity they did was in 1753. They petitioned the government for their freedom, and they won. And it became known as the Moor Sundry Act. So Noble Drew Ali picked up the fact that we're Moors.
Right, and just to take it back, because just from my reading, there's quite a few Muslim slaves that petitioned to get their freedom based on the fact, I'm a Moor. Or even the white people couldn't understand, like, look, he reads Arabic or multiple languages, speaks. A lot of these slave owners, you have to realize, like, they couldn't even read or write. So there you got someone reading and writing multiple languages, educated, erudite, right? The scholarly tradition of Islam in Africa. And because in their mind, they were like, these people are different. So they were like, okay, you're Moors. It doesn't matter if you're black as can be. You know what I mean? They had to try to separate them because, and quite a few people actually got freedom based on that.
Prince among slaves. Mm-hmm. Job ibn Dijallo. Omar ibn Said had the choice to, but he chose not to. There's quite a few that they thought that they was Moors, so they was able to get their freedom. But what because they thought that black folks didn't have no soul, no spirit, soulless, and they just didn't know. I mean, Islam was in Africa for 700 years before the slave trade started. Islam was ingrained for generations and for generations. So I'm going to move forward back with Noble Drew Ali. So Noble Drew Ali did not identify himself as a Muslim, as we know, into the rituals. They were more into the culture and identity of being a Moor. I'm a Moor. So some of the rituals are quite different. He established his own Quran. They pray a little different. They know Islam, they respect Islam. They may say Islam is their religion, but they're more about their culture.
Islam, that's their greeting, right? Islam.
Yeah, Islam.
Instead of Assalamu alaikum, they say Islam.
Islam.
Islam,
and what I learned, they go into a lot of Masonic signs and symbols.
Right.
If you see, Noble Drew Ali was with his hand over his heart and standing on a square. When you see him like this, these are Masonic signs that he's reaching out. So it was more of a Masonic level.
And wearing the fez, just like a lot of Masons wearing the fez.
When we was taught in the Nation of Islam, a Mason is a Muslim son. Someone that learned a little bit of Islam.
That's right.
Now, then you come in, right after Noble Drew Ali, you have Farad Muhammad, was an Indo-Pak. They came in, some reports say that he was given the leadership of the Moor Science Temple, but they put him out. And he ran to Detroit, and what he started was a lost temple of Islam. Then until they got a couple guys he brought in, went a little berserk, a little crazy. Wanted to kill a couple people. So the FBI and the cops and everybody came in and raided it. So he changed it to what they called the Lost Found Nation of Islam in the wilderness of North America. I believe is the title that it was called. He did that for about 3 years. Then he chose Elijah Muhammad to be his leader, the next leader of the community. And what he told them is that, one, he never said he was God. He said he was the Mahdi. He was here to revive the faith. It was Elijah Muhammad that came years later and said that that was God. So this is where that even his own brother, Khalid, or the FOI, went to chase him, wanted to go kill him. And that's how he wound up in the D.C. area. Washington, D.C. was the first temple that Elijah Muhammad established and built. Temple 1, number 2, number 3 was built by Farad Muhammad. All the others was established by Elijah Muhammad.
And there's still the temple number.
Temple number 4, or Master Muhammad, which was temple number 4 at the time, still exists.
Yeah, we prayed there last time.
It is the only building or masjid that was built by Elijah Muhammad from the ground up. And it was the only one really called mosque. All of them was called temples. Now,
until he went to like Hajj, then he came back.
But now that's another story. When he went to Hajj, no, once the temple wasn't established after he went to Hajj, came after. But he called it a mosque. But out in the community, they called it a temple. But on the sign on the board, it was called a mosque. Within that, Malcolm helped raise some money. You can see it in some of the FBI reports that Malcolm helped raise $1,900 to help get that building started. There's a very, very, very good, beautiful story about that and their works that they did to establish that building. With Elijah establishing, you see, and then I don't really have the time, maybe it'll be another conversation, but with the Nation of Islam, you find about 4 different growths, 4 different changes. When it first started, they were more Islamically conscious, I would say. They say that Farad Muhammad gave 25,000 people Islamic names before he left. Elijah, if you look at some of the early lessons, they was taught how to do wudu. Was taught the prayer, Abraham should have taught my whole self to thee, O Allah, trying to be upright to him, originate the heavens and the earth. There was taught a prayer, one of the Sunnah prayers, Allah, seek refuge in you from anxiety and grief, or lack of strength and laziness, cowardice and godliness. I mean, no power by death and oppression of man. I'm only going pieces, I'm not going to say it all. And they was taught the Al-Fatiha. But we was also taught that Elijah said that he's only here to clean us up. The one that was going to come after him was going to teach you the religion. So what you had, that went on in the 30s and then in the 40s. When Elijah got arrested for not joining the military, he went in jail, and that's when he started realizing wanted to do for self. And he came out and they started opening up a couple of businesses. But they always still was pointing to Mecca. Mecca was the answer. Mecca was the place. Streets was painted with gold. It wasn't until he went to Hajj and found out them streets wasn't painted with no gold. They were saying they couldn't help themselves. And that's when he came back into being, no, we got to do for self. And that's when he put more focus. Then in the 50s with Malcolm and some of the Jim Crow laws, they came more black conscious. Came more of a social reform movement. But then in 75, when Imam Wardi Muhammad came in, the community had came corrupt before the Imam came in. There was pockets of corruption that was around. Man and men's greed. Men misuse and abuse of people. When Imam Wardi Muhammad came in, he came in like Isa or Jesus. He came into the temples, running out the money changers. He promoted Farrakhan to Chicago, took him from his base. He promoted the gangster, the Imam, let me be careful, the brother in Philly. He moved him from Philly to New York. For me, I come from Connecticut, New York. New York, Connecticut people are white collar criminals. They skim some money, take some money, white collar criminals. Phillies are gangster criminals, hard rock, And so then you're gonna bring a hard rock guy up to New York. They wasn't going for it. They was smooth. It was rough. So it was a bloodless coup. And he moved a few other corrupt people around. That it was a bloodless coup. That then he started bringing about changes. Then he started using words. One of the first things he said, man means mind. Think. You know, and if you see some of his early photographs, he put his fingers to his temple to think. He used colors, he used metaphysics and language to move people about. Mm-hmm. We had to make, just like the Prophet Muhammad started with Islam, the Muslims had to change their Qibla, their direction. The Muslim in the nation of Islam had to change their direction. Mm-hmm. We was doing sharp. Some of us had Farad as God. Some of us had other things, money and everything else as God. We had to move it to following the Quran. Mm-hmm. We had to move it to loving Allah. Mm-hmm. So he pushed us to that. And then another thing he pushed us to, he tried to move us out of color consciousness. He tried to move us, he said that a lot of things people just don't know. Back then, when the Nation of Islam started, blacks was called colored, Negroes, and everything else, coons and everything else. Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam said, no, we're black. He brought about, forced that concept of black, then Black Panthers and everybody else brought
Black
that
power comes later.
Yeah. Then W.D. Muhammad said, blackness ain't gonna get you nowhere. Nationalism ain't gonna get you nowhere. So he said, no, don't call yourself black. So he tried to take on a personality. He identified Bilal ibn Rabah. He said, call yourself Bilalian. He was an Ethiopian. He was an enslaved person that came to Islam. There's some comparison that we have. That went on for a few years, but that didn't settle. So he said, well, okay, call yourself African American then, if that's what you want to do. And then a year later, the African American leadership, Senator Douglas Wilder, Jesse Jackson, and a few other African American leadership was in Chicago, called a press conference, said that we're going to call ourselves African American people. That has been going on since then. So you see those subtle.
That's from Imam Muhammad.
Yes. Yes.
So and recently in my reading about it, like I wasn't aware of because people don't know, we talk about the Islamic State. Now everyone talks about that, but the nation was an Islamic state in America. They had businesses, they had import, export, they had land, they had grocery stores, they had a whole empire, and it was centralized. It all comes back to the headquarters.
Yeah, that's right.
And there was a paramilitary too.
That's right.
And it was rough. It was, they had a Sharia court, and you would get excommunicated for a specific time. You did this infraction, you're out for 6 months. You're asked for 2 months. You're out for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And it's funny now, right? Because that's the worst thing for them. Is I can't go to the mosque for 2 years. Now people are you can't go to the mosque for 2 years. I didn't go to the mosque for the last 2 years anyway.
Right.
No. But they were it was this.
That's right.
Real community and this, unity. But of course, there was a lot of power politics, and with the paramilitary, is a lot of just what happened with Malcolm. When Malcolm, left, it was not safe. Not just before, they were attacking people that went with Malcolm. It was all out war,
That's right. You said a couple things. As a young man, I think I feel blessed. I met the brother, became friends with the brother that Benjamin Kareem. He was the one that brought Malcolm to the podium before he was assassinated and martyred. We became good friends. He shared a lot of information with that. Now, going to the Nation of Islam, we was a nation within a nation. We was a nation within a nation. We believed in that. I think, therefore I am. We had buildings, schools, everything. It was a nation within a nation, and I worked for the nation. It wasn't until Imam Muhammad came, what we're taught. This world is nothing but illusion. This is nothing but a man's idea. Every building, everything we see is a man's idea. Somebody designed and developed it, but we get caught up into the physical. So when Imam Muhammad came in and broke down that this is nothing but an illusion. He broke down the mythology and everything, and it all disappeared. I'm like, whoa. And then right after that, the fall of the Russian Empire came. I said, wow, it is really nothing but an illusion. So this is what gave me real strong strength and foundation, that this world's life is nothing but illusion. Our final journey is to Allah. Don't get caught up into what you see physical. This is a journey to travel through. There's things that was in the nation, and I want to back up because the Nation of Islam was just the popular Muslim organization, the largest one. But there was Sunni Muslims that evolved. Another thing I learned, in the Quran forces, we got to learn to live and let live. That Allah will take care of things. Allah's in charge. Where that there was the Ahmadiyans came and had a major influence upon the Muslims in America, up in the Pittsburgh, Ohio, Youngstown, and Chicago area. But there was a natural evolution that some of the early leaders that followed, African American Muslim leaders that followed the Ahmadiyans left them. Wally Akron out of Cleveland, he started what they call a 10-year Muslim plan. Then there was other Sunni Muslims, and two groups in Pittsburgh, a couple groups up in upstate New York. Another one came through the Moore Science Temple, went to Turkey, made hijrah to Turkey. Told him he had 25,000 people that if they could get something developed, that they would come. But Turkey didn't buy it. They gave him a job as cleaning ditches, whatever the plumbing stuff was. So then he wound up going to Egypt. Then he came back. He came back here. Professor Ezzeldin. Professor Ezzeldin had a community they brought land, hundreds of acres of land upstate New York, hundreds of acres of land lower part of New Jersey. So they all had in their concept to do for self. They all had a concept to build a community life. What happened with Muhammad, I think when he changed the word from nation to community, it lost their concept that you still got to build a community, you still got to build a life. But there's few pockets around. And I see the same tradition with Muslim community today. You go to New Jersey, parts of New Jersey, you go down the street, you got a Muslim community. You find different pockets around that is growing and evolving. And then we're also coming together as a community. When I first came here, I used to have to go to the Jewish market to go buy my meat. Now I got 5 different choices to go buy my meat. There's a lot of different masjids now around. It wasn't like it is today.
I mean, there's just so much in here and so much to ask about there's just no way to even touch it all. This is going to have to be like a 25-part series or something like that. But are there any individuals that you come across or stories or that particularly stick out to you of the history?
There's a few. I like the story of Job ibn Dijallo. I like all the stories. You see Allah's in them. Job ibn Dijallo, he sold Muslims. He sold slaves. And Allah punished him. He got caught and captured by the same ship captain that he sold some slaves to.
Wow.
When he came here, he made Tawbah. Yo, Lord, what the I do here? And he cried and he pleaded, and he got his freedom. Because they found him praying, dickering and everything, and he had some character. And he made it to England. They gave the dukes and everybody gave him gold watches, jewelry. They was amazed at his character. Another thing is the 1768 writing. See, for me, they told us we couldn't read and write. But we could read and write. We wrote Arabic. And their language. They use, you go up in there, you see some Mandingo words. You see some Hausa words, but it's in Arabic.
Right.
Is the Al-Fatiha and 4 of the last surahs of the Holy Quran. It took them 90 years before they did the translation. Oh, I can't read and write. Yeah, somebody told a lie. We've been hookwinked. That's why I like it, because you can validate a lot of things that Malcolm said. You can see it for real. Another one is the Gullah story. The Gullah people. They call them the Gullah people. They come from the Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. They was able to maintain their Islamic community. Like I said earlier, two of the leaders was Bilali Muhammad and Salih Bilali. And for me, we had Bilal in Islamic story, but now in America I got 2 Bilals, not one but 2. And I found a tombstone with the one guy. Oh my God, come on. So that moved me. And then that's close. My uncle was burying people on one of the islands. So it's my heritage. It's close to me. There's other pockets. The towns, Muhammad. There's a Muhammad, Texas, Muhammad, Illinois. And the reason why Muhammad, Texas get me, and I hope this goes out, they tell us Muslims aren't no cowboys. We're not. We was camel boys. Really, wallahi. They used 75 camel herders to go out west. Go out west. And one of them biggest political people that be telling them lies come from Texas. Allah is Akbar. There's a town called Muhammad, Texas. Left by one of those camel herders. So no, we was not cowboys, we were camel boys. And we left a town called Muhammad, Texas. Right there for crews and all the rest of them could see. Then there's the town.
That reminds me, just to interject, that I was in Australia and they told me that because Australia is huge, it's the size of the continental United States, and it's desert in the middle. All the European, the British come and they're like, we're not going across this huge desert. So they brought what they called Afghan cameleers. That was just the term they used. It wasn't all Afghani. Some were from Pakistan, India, but there were Muslims who, could ride the camels and to explore the interior. And so there's still mosques that they built that were made out of like tin and wood and stuff like that. And to this day, there are more, because basically had all these camels, and then when the job was done, some of them settled, some of them left. But all the camels, they just left them there. And so the camels just were free in the center of the country and just breeding and have no predators, right? So to this day, there's more camels in Australia than Arabia.
Wow. That's power of Allah. Wow. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of those stories. Like that story, there's a cowboy picture. The whole Southwestern Trail. In this cowboy picture, it shows how they got out west. They shows 3 Arabs, one they call Hajj Ali, which was Hajj Ali, pulling camels and making sajda. I said, wow.
Hajj Ali.
Yep, Hajj Ali. Those are the 2 that they record. Then the 1900s, what I like about the 1900s, it starts busting bubbles. In the sense that it shows you so many Muslims that come in, like I talked about the Afghanistan, got his citizenship here. The Polish Tartars, Alexander Russell Webb. Then, of course, you got Noble Drew Ali. But for me, the man of the hour at that time was Muhammad Dusi Ali. He was a Renaissance man. He was a playwright, an actor, and an imam. He's the one, you ever heard of Marcus Garvey? Marcus Garvey say, one God, one aim, one purpose. It was him that gave him that concept. Marcus Garvey used to work for him. He was from Nigeria. Well, no, he wound up going to Nigeria. He's from Africa, probably born in Egypt. Lived in England for a while and was a writer. Came over to the United States in the Detroit area, started a couple of Muslim organizations, then wound up going into Nigeria.
And that was around what?
1920s. This is the 1920s. 1920s, then you had the Ahmadiyans coming in. And that wave of Muslims were there. Then you got Imam Wali Akram and Imam Ezzeddin. These are imams of the 30s and 40s that was found in Sunnah.
Right. Wali Akram is in Cleveland.
Yes.
They have the first Cleveland mosque. I think
right.
his grandson is the imam still, or son. Or
Could be
something.
one of them. Matter of fact, I'd be a good story to hear them. I found it unique. I interviewed one of them one time. And the Nation of Islam got stories. Who's the original man, the Asiatic black man, blah, 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 boom, the earth weighs 6 million tons and things like that. But the First Mosque of Cleveland got stories that they gave to children, but they're Islamic stories. And then they were rattling off like the Nation of Islam people. I'm like, wow.
But you got to memorize the lesson.
Yeah, you can see it. So, yes, I thought that was very unique, very unique. So I like that. And then today, you got Muslims in all aspects of American society. There's over 14 Muslim judges today. There's over 14 Muslim mayors today. You got Muslim police officers, correction officers, Muslims in all aspects of American society today.
I want to open up to everybody, but there's one thing I forgot to ask, and that was for music. I know jazz, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about Islam and jazz, Muslims and jazz.
Well, do honor and justice. I'm not a jazz musician. I'm not a jazz connoisseur, okay?
Right.
But Jazz, my understanding, really comes out of blues. And from Sylvain Daouf, who wrote the book Servants of Allah, she points out that the blues is the singing. They sing the blues. This is what they call the Adan in West Africa, those origins. Then you have many Muslim jazz musicians, Art Blakely, Latif Jamal, Ahmed Jamal, Muhammad, Idris Muhammad, Kirkland Bey. I mean, there's so many early jazz musicians. Many Muslims played jazz. You have the Muslim Ahmed, who was the Turkish ambassador's son, will open up the doors, the Turkish embassy doors, to allow African American jazz musicians come in and play, because they wouldn't allow many of them to play in other places, but they wouldn't let them play. Jazz had a very, 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 very strong influence. Muslims had a very strong influence in jazz, from bebop to hip hop. You see, many of the hip hop people are Muslim, you know, or have Islamic ideas or concept, be from 7%ers, 5%ers, whatever they come from. There's that Islamic influence on them.
And then to close, before we open it, I probably should have asked this at the beginning, but why is this important to you? Why is preserving this history important for people in our day and age?
If we don't tell our story, nobody will. There was somebody else to tell your story. There's so many stories there's so, man, look. We have to tell our story. If we don't, somebody else will. We don't belong here. We haven't been here. We're something foreign. Trump is going to push us out. Get out of here. I've been here. No way. And matter of fact, on my mother's side of the family, I was doing research. My earliest ancestor was born free in 1790. And they had to go to court to, let them describe how they looked and all this. And one of the court records had a guy named Thomas Hawk, H-A-Q-Q. That's a Muslim. That made me think, well, this Sojourner Truth changed her name. But Muslims was here in the 1700s in Virginia. They fought in the Revolutionary War. Come on. I don't buy it. There's that need. We need that sense of belonging. I don't want my Muslim immigrants to feel cowtail. You got to be ashamed or hide, or that they don't belong here. There's a sense that my Muslim or African American descent got to realize that there's other Muslims that are here. We're part of an American family, Muslim American family. It is important for my Christians to know. Because Allah says He made us what? Tribes and nations not to despise one another, but get to know one another. So I'm trying to get them to know us. Come to learn about us. A lot of them don't want to come into a mosque or church or synagogue. They want a free third space. We provide that third space for cultural expression, historical understanding of who we are and what we are. And we hope this will not only grow and develop, but also go other places. Because everybody has a story. You got a local story. There's a story of Muslims in California, in your local area. Then you can tell the inclusive story. They say all politics is local, right? We have a national and a local story. We started out with Yarrow Mahmood, a local story. But we're national, international. Our story is an international story. Our story is an American story. And it's an important story.
So, anybody has any questions or any comments or any reflections?
I want to thank the brother for what you've done here, and we were just talking. We need to come up with some kind of a curriculum based off of what you have here that can be shared across America in all the masajid, the immigrant masajids, as well as the non-immigrant masajid that talk about this history. And we'd be happy to help you, inshallah, try to make that book or some kind of something that tells the history of Muslims in America from all the artifacts and everything that you have here, inshallah.
Inshallah, it's coming. I think so. That was Brother Parvez from Yarrow Collective. Yarrow Collective has been a group that's been supporting us on many different occasions. has supported this program. So I very much appreciate your comment.
Can you touch on the Saga America?
The Saga
that piece
America.
that really is pretty mind-boggling.
I'm not sure if y'all heard what he said. He asked me about this book called Saga of America by Barry Fells. Saga of America is a book, and this is why, Americans, everything you got to be documented. You got to show. This is why when we start with our museum, we start with the history of 1500. Estebanico is documented. They can't deny it. But with Barry, and I'm not a major scholar, and he was from Harvard. The other scholar, Van Sertiman, they came before Columbus, was from Harvard, and they still challenged all of them. But Barry Fells, Saga of America, states that Muslim early communities was in America in the 1300s, 1200s, and out west, in what they call the Four Corners. They found old schools, old writings. He validates the early presence of Muslims way before Columbus, and he shows the writings. He shows the caves where they had the school systems, and this is what they call the Four Corners of the United States: Utah, Colorado, in that area. That Muslim was heavily out. You'll find Muslims amongst Native American Indians. That's another untold story. So there's a heavy report of Muslims coming here way before Columbus.
For sure.
Way before Columbus.
What was it? Even Columbus, in his journals, was one of the early explorers. He said when they got there, he said in his journal, we found mosques and pagan temples.
Yep.
And no historian even debates that, but they just say now, he was confused because they were used to fighting the Muslims in Spain. So they just said, mosque. They called it, or it was a mosque.
Yep. They didn't even look. Before that, they thought the world was flat. Mm-hmm. When did they come? When did Columbus come? When? 1492, right? What happened in 1492?
Granada fell.
Very good. That's right. And that's when they found the maps. Oh, this is where the Muslims been traveling. Mm-hmm. So there was two Muslims that helped Columbus get his ships going, the Penzoff family. And they went out. But until then, it was flat to them. It was us that exposed them to the other parts of the world to travel. And this is what they call a discovery. And this is one reason why we encourage Muslims all around the country to celebrate October as America's Islamic Heritage Month. For the last 10 years in Washington, D.C., the mayor has issued a proclamation honoring October as America's Islamic Heritage Month. One of the reasons why we did it because they say Columbus supposed to have been here in October. We was here. So we try to celebrate that. We try to be a little bit more than Prince of Slave Abdul Rahman. One of his first Arabic writings he wrote was in October 1828. So we do that.
Well, you just said that they discredit the that Columbus and these different navigators came and said that there were mosques by saying, well, they were just fresh in their mind because they were fighting the Muslims in Spain. But it's also the other side of it is, well, they knew what a mosque was. Mm-hmm. Not just, well, they're confused. Well, maybe they actually had the most expertise from a non-Muslim perspective of what that looked like. Mm-hmm. So,
and the goal.
You can spin it any way you really want to.
Right. And the goal. I mean, there's log journals. He talked about seeing the old rooms of mosques in Cuba and in Panama. And he talks about the gold that they use. Matter of fact, they say that Hawaii and Honolulu is Islamic names, West African Islamic names. One is the wind, the sweetness of the wind, and I forgot what the other one meant.
Pearls.
Lulu. Here are pearls.
So I'm telling you, I mean, it's...
Right. And then you have Mansa Musa coming with all these ships from Africa.
Abu Bakr, Mansa Musa's brother. He came here in 1300 and went all through the Mississippi. Matter of fact, if you go through Mississippi, Natchez, Mississippi, in particular, I haven't been around the others, where it's called the Indian living houses. They're like African huts. They're not no Indian teepees. They're like African huts. And then they got these 2 miles. And for me, I see Sawa and Mawa. But they said this was the religious area for them. But yeah, Muslims travel all through Mississippi. Mansa Musa, brother, they all down up in Brazil.
You got the Olmec heads, which are African heads that even have like Mandingo helmets. Like, it's very clear.
It's clear that people are in a state of denial.
And then they acknowledge too that I saw this map and it was a map and then it showed like an image all across America of local tribes, Native Americans, had a face and it had the local headdress. And most of them are feathered headdresses, but in the Florida area, they're turbans.
Those are your
They were
cinnamos.
turbans.
With Abraham, there's definitely turbans, and with the long arm. And there's another group of Muslims out there, Native American Indians in what was I at? Mecca, in Muhammad, Illinois. I can't think of the tribe name, but they begin with a K. And one of the things that was unique for them in the museum was that they buried people. They were buried to dead. And I guess the Cowboys pictures are true that the Indians were putting them up on high. But this group of Indians was burying the dead, and they would wear their gowns, long gowns. I'm telling you, we cannot look at our past as we see things today. Some of these people didn't have the freedom to practice religion as we know. Some people had to change. They was given a different name. You see the story about Kunta Kinte. They gave him his name, Toby. He fought the Dickens. Same my name is Toby. This is, if y'all watch the movie, this here is the actual Chicken George, the grandson of him, and that's on his tombstone. And you see that's a throw. Know what they told us? He was in his pajamas. What man gonna go in his pajamas, put a pipe in his mouth to take a picture and pose? Come on. Just don't know. But because you being a Muslim, you could recognize some Islamic things. There's things that they cannot recognize. Like I said about the tombstone, and I get the comment, Muslims ain't supposed to have tombstones, all this, blah, 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 blah. I've been to Hajj. I've seen tombstones in cemeteries.
Yeah, come on.
I've seen them on TV. Come on. So these people they didn't know. But they knew, put that one finger on there. That much they did know. They might be Alice, Nancy, whatever, but they one God.
I grew up in Seattle, and in the suburb across the lake, there's a small city called Medina. Mm-hmm. And I did some research because I was like, why Medina? And it's named after Medina. Mm-hmm. But that there was like some woman who named it, and there's different stories, like she just loved history and she read about this holy city in Arabia, and so she named it, and they didn't know how to say it, so they called it Medina. So it's called Medina, but that city, it's like the most wealthy area code in America now, and Bill Gates lives there. And so they don't know it, but that's from the blessing of Medina, blessing of the Prophet ﷺ, that increased their risk. So
yeah. There's 8 towns named Mena in America. Somebody really had to know about Mena. Now you give them Medina, you give them Mecca. I might seen it in a book, but Mena? Come on. That was a little bit of research. Like Muhammad, Illinois, they wanted to change the name to Middletown. But there was already a town called Middletown in Illinois, so they had to go back to Muhammad. So when you go to Muhammad, you see the post office Muhammad, you see the administrative building Muhammad, you see a lot of the buildings Muhammad, but the cemetery say Middletown, and one of the high schools say Middletown. I guess this is when can't stomach the name Muhammad, But then they know, and then in what was it? That Muhammad, or Muhammad, Illinois, or Mecca, and one of either in Muhammad, Illinois, or in Mecca, Indiana, the law of the land for them. This is through the Writers Project. Stated that you bought land, but if you got alcohol on your land, you lose rights. You lose your land. So that was Islamic. I don't know what they want to say, who they want to say, but somebody that had some structures to that land, to that law, was Muslims. Because they could not sell alcohol or have alcohol on the land or they would lose it. And this is in what they call the Government Writers Project. This is a group of people that went around investigating and writing the stories. And so it's well documented.
So what's up with the Masonic fetish with Islam?
Masonic fetish with Islam.
Because you see these huge, like, mosque-looking things, but it's not a mosque. That's no way.
Man, look, man, my travels, man, I've seen some gorgeous masjids that are Masonic places, Man. Mm-hmm. But we was taught, in my understanding, that when Muslims, see, a lot of times we was taught, we know that Muslim conquered Spain. But we don't realize Muslim conquered the southern part of France, and then it got pushed back. When they was in France, they taught the Knights Templars to the knowledge, to be civilized. Like some of the things that, like I said, Noble Jali, like the Masonics, they believe in charity. This is where you got the Shriners Hospital. They take on some of the Islamic rituals. They believe they're weak, but they're taught like right here. They're taught one of the sciences to stand on a square, a 90-degree angle. We're taught the same thing. We're taught in this context that Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he made the night journey, you got to grow vertically in order to grow out horizontally. You got to purify yourself. You got to grow spiritually. Then when he came back, then he make hijrah. Then we go to Medina. That's when he started establishing Medina. After he made the hijrah, we had to grow spiritually. I explained that earlier with Imam Worthy Muhammad. He said our community came corrupt. So he had to got all the horizontal stuff out. Clean up the soul, clean up the spirit, clean up your thinking right first, and then you can move out and be productive. This right here. We got Muslims. You see Muslims around here. I got a problem here with Muslims. That they sell stuff. They bring the weak. They're chasing the dollar. They're selling paraphernalia, drugs paraphernalia, in order to chase that dollar. Now I got nothing but criminal. If y'all pull up in there, there ain't nothing but knuckleheads over there. But if I go out and I get tired of going out there every day, come on, man. And I try to tell them, Malcolm, Muhammad Ali earned that right. These people know what these Muslims stands for. Don't come over here messing us up, making it look bad. They earned that right. I don't care what, man, they may say or think. People, the world love Malcolm. The world love Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali will whoop you if you taught them anything other than Muhammad Ali. And the world know it. And people have that respect. If I go out the door, I say, come on, man. Matter of fact, sometimes when some of our programs come and they start seeing sisters coming over here, they'll just fade away because they know better. They know what we stand for. We have to stand on our principles. I'm telling you, the Quran is the book. This is the book, sure, without doubt. We just have to believe it, work it, practice it. And for me, I guess because coming from the Nation of Islam, and once they gave us the Quran, I had to use it. Had to work it. And like one job, when I first got a job into the world, even the nation, guy asked me, can I sell? Can I sell? Of course I can sell. I couldn't tell him I sold illegal drugs. I couldn't tell him I sold fish. That was what the Muslims sold. We sold fish and we sold the paper. Muhammad's peace. Couldn't tell him I sold that. Told him I sold food products and educational products. He gave me a job. Thank God he didn't ask me what it was, but he gave me a job. Then it started growing and evolving. Then they put me in a position, leadership position. I had a business downtown in Richmond, Virginia one time. And what is like, back then days was a store, Tallheimers and Miller and Rose, I think, which would be Macy's today, and all them kind of stores. And all them management, all them top people up in there. And me, I'm a little boy from the hood, sitting with all these guys. And now I'm calling out Musa. What did Musa do when he had to meet all the magicians and everybody, right? He said, well, who? Y'all gonna cast down or me cast down? He let them cast down first. Then the snake with his staff ate it all up. So I learned that strategy. Look, let me be quiet and listen to all what they got to say. Then when they finish, I'll regurgitate what I heard. I'll summarize what I heard. They thought I knew something. Y'all know that was a strategy I used. Here's another 2 more strategies in the Quran I see. Then there's a whole bunch, but we don't use them. Muslims, open your eyes. Don't be mysticized. And I guess that coming through the Nation of Islam helped me, to look at reality as reality. Don't get caught on the physical and material things that I see. This question was brought up about the Quran that was saved during the Civil War. In Tuscaloosa, Alabama, in the Civil War, the Union troops came down and wanted to burn down the town, blow up everything, burn down the town. The librarian said, can we save some books? He said, no, you can save one book. That one book he ran and saved was this Quran. The Quran is still there at that library today. So it's the only book that was saved during the Civil War. It was the George Sells version. Inside that particular Quran was a map, a map of Arabia before it was Arabia. It was called Yemen. Inside this map, and an early map of the design of the Kaaba. Also in there was a map a genealogical chart of the Arabs. Adnan, Qattan, and the Fahir are listed all in this map. So you can see the genealogical trace of it in there. So that was important. Allah said that He would protect His book. And that book was protected, and it's still there today.
We ask that Allah protects His place, inshallah, and increases the benefit, you know what I mean, spreads it far and wide. It's definitely true, you know, that, you know, having historical consciousness. It's like you want to destroy a tree, you can rip down almost all the branches, it's going to be all right. But you start cutting off the roots, it's done.
Right.
So thank you for preserving the roots for us.
Amen.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you all for coming. You get a round of applause, inshallah.